early 1950s, we also had a Chinese man living here, Tzu-Yü. And he lived here between 1947 and 1962. And he made his living by lecturing about China around Sweden, but also by translating Chinese classics by, for example, Confucius, Lao Tzu, to Swedish, together with the Swedish author Alf Henriksson. And one of the ideas that he had, together with my father, was that they should build a Chinese pavilion of learning. So they together made the design and constructed a Chinese pavilion, which was finished, I think, in 1954. We are now in the Chinese pavilion, which my father and Tzu-Yü created in the early 1950s. One might ask, why was a man from China in Sweden? Well, the story in short is that he came from Nanjing and Kaifeng. And his father was a professor of mathematics in Nanjing, and he wanted his son also to be able to study mathematics. So, he went to Great Britain to study mathematics. And this happened in the late 1930s. In 1939, he thought that he would like to have a vacation in Sweden to see the Nordic countries. And he came here and he was touring around, looking at Sweden. Then the Second World War broke out, early September 1939. And suddenly it was not possible to get back to England. So he had to stay here. And he had to try to find a way to make a living. And he did many different things. He had to work in restaurants, wash dishes, and he became an assistant to a Swedish professor of sinology at the University of Stockholm, Professor Oswald Sirén. And at some time he met my father, Martin Allwood, in Stockholm. And my father said, well, you speak English very well, so why don't you come to our summer school in Mullsjö, where you can help us to teach English. So he came here in the summer. I think maybe the first time was in 1942 or something like that. And he liked it, and he came back year after year. Finally, he decided in 1947 that he wanted to actually try to live here, to stay here. And he brought his new wife then. And together they came here, and they lived in one of the houses here, Björke Hill. And his wife opened a daycare center, kindergarten. And he decided to try to make his living by lecturing about China, telling the Swedish general public about what China was. It was very unknown in those days. So he traveled around the country where there were so-called lecturing societies, where he would then give talks. My father did the same thing, lecturing about India, the United States, etc. But so they worked on this, and he also, between going lecturing, he would do translation work involving Chinese, and he was translating Chinese classics, Confucius, Lao Tzu, etc. And this was then published in Swedish. Together, he did some of this publishing work together with the Swedish author Alf Henriksson, who came from Huskvarna, which is not too far away from here. He lived this way until I'm not quite sure, 53 or something like that, when he bought a new house a little further up the hill here, where he then lived until 1962, when he decided that he would like to have more connection with the University of Gothenburg, and he became lecturer of Chinese at the University of Gothenburg, and his wife then became a librarian at the University Library. So, but anyway, between 1947 and 1962, he lived here, and every summer he lectured to our students about China, and he would tell them some Chinese characters, the moon, the sun, etc., etc. And he would give them words like Bing Chilling, ice cream, or Wo Ai Ni, I love you, etc. So he worked intensively to try to make China well known in Sweden, and did very good work in this respect. We also have a Chinese bridge which crosses the little brook that we have running through the landscape. And as you can see, there's a little wall in front of it. That's a so-called ghost wall. And you might say it's not very efficient because the ghosts could go around it. But according to traditional Chinese ideas, ghosts can only walk straight through the door. So if you have a small wall like this, it will be enough to keep the ghosts out. As you can see also on the roof, we have some Chinese symbols. We have the yellow is supposed to be a dragon, which is a symbol, I think, for wealth and good luck. And on the little further up on the roof we see two red little fish. That, I think, is a symbol for long life. The Chinese people often like to have symbols for good luck, for long life, etc.